I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today, as part of our Meet the Experts nonfiction reality panel, I am joined by Karina Holden, one of the producers of Love on the Spectrum that airs on Netflix. First question I wanted to ask you was, I understand you're Australian. I know you were involved with the original Australian version, which the American version spawned from. What were the challenges, if there were any, you encountered in bringing the show to the US from Australia?
Oh, I mean, honestly, it was a great way to cross the ocean and take what was a very authentic, natural type of experience, a real almost documentary fly on the wall style of reality. And it was literally just casting new people because when we adapted the show for Netflix with a US cast, there weren't many changes really needed. Netflix really embraced the style and the pace and the work of all of the team, and so it wasn't actually very different to the show that we made in Australia. I guess it was the big thing was we were now working with a bit of a US team as well, and so our field team in the US has staff who are running in an office in LA, but our director and other executive producer, Kean O'Cleary, who created the show with me, he's the showrunner over there. The post-production of the series actually still happens in Australia. And so there's a great cross-pollination of staff that work on the show, but it still essentially remains the same.
So I'm actually curious, where did the idea for this show come from? How did you get the idea to do a show like this?
Well, I guess Kean and myself always looked at and loved watching dating shows, but there was this real sort of sense of, this white ableism, the very homogenous casting, that the idea of love in itself is something that you aspire to once you're successful, rich, beautiful, and this idea that dating and love and belonging and these things should come to all of us really. And we'd worked on a series called Employable Me, which was looking at young people who were doing their jobs for the first time who had disabilities, people who identified as neurodiverse, people who had physical disabilities or intellectual disabilities. And we just had such a great experience working with this cast on this series about what it was like to enter the workplace for the first time. But what a lot of those people said to us when we worked with them and we were finding them jobs and watching their process of their families, encouraging them and moving on in their lives to meet these milestones was a job would be great, but a partner would be even better. Having someone to love me and hold me and even just go out on a date with and feel seen in the world. And so we started to look at this idea specific to people who are neurodiverse, who in itself, neurodiversity is something, autism spectrum is so broad and misunderstood, especially, going back even a decade ago, we thought people who were autistic had a lack of ability to connect socially and that they didn't want those things because of those social interactions. And so it was really a way to debunk some of the stereotypical ideas about autism through a dating format, which everybody can relate to. But there was this a beauty of stripping back this purity of intention that came with the cast members. And I think that that's why the idea really has entrenched itself in the audiences, that they get this experience of authentic people who really want love, not just want fame.
What was the process of casting the new members for this second season, and was it any different than how the initial group of people were cast for the show?
It wasn't really, and the second season has some returning characters, and that's always a wonderful journey to watch people as as we get to know them, and then we go deeper into their lives, and we especially characters who are so memorable, watching what has happened. And what was beautiful in the first series in America was the relationship, for example, that formed between Abby and David. And so we've watched them and their relationship grow. And in the second season, they had their big first overseas trip to Africa, which is where on their very first date, when they went to the zoo in Los Angeles, and they said, one day I'll take you to Africa. And we were able to see that happen in the second season. So
I
that was
love those
beautiful to
lines.
watch. Yeah, beautiful to watch that, people's lives deepening. But when finding new people for the show, there's a lot of outreach. A lot of things happen over social media these days. But the original way we cast the show was never through casting agencies. It was always our production team itself, our producing associate producers had connections into disability organisations, outreach groups, employment agencies that work with people who are neurodiverse. And so it was more community outreach rather than going through an agency and looking at who have you got on your book so much.
Speaking of outrage, it's interesting, when you're doing a show like this, obviously you're going to get, there's going to be a lot of reaction, visceral reaction, especially when dealing with something that's so personal for so many people. And what I was wondering is that you'll get a lot of people, especially on social media, just like throwing the most crass criticisms at you. But I'm curious, was there any piece of criticism that you found very constructive following the first season that that influenced how you approach the second season?
Yeah, look, I think it's an incredible learning journey. And I myself have gone through it with my own child as well. And so I think that you have to really tune into the community and listen. We find ways to have people who are autistic or autistic people involved in the series itself, right through into post-production and consulting and sitting down and listening and working with people. Because as somebody who myself is neurotypical, it's important for, as a filmmaker, that that's a big responsibility. You can't assume, so you always have to ask. You have to find ways to include people into their own storytelling. And when it comes to identity, a lot of people want to really embrace their diagnosis or this label that they've been given, and other people don't so much. Things such as we can't assume that if somebody is autistic that they also want to date somebody who is autistic. And just as it comes about race and sexuality and all of these intersectional things, it's so important to involve the people who are part of the series in the decisions that are made, and nothing's done without them. Right through to who they're meeting, where they're meeting. It's a surprise, but we really take directions from them. And then, I think it's been really important to just pare back the narration so that people are really their own storytellers. The narrator is literally only there just to tell us who we are meeting, and whereabouts we're meeting them, and just a reminder to reset. But we really want the people who are involved in the series to own their own stories and have that direct relationship with the audience because of that.
We are an awards site, and I guess it was either 2 or 3 years ago. You guys had a really, really good night at the Creative Arts Emmys, winning three trophies, including a big one, Best Unstructured Reality Program. I'm curious as to what was that experience? What was that experience of going there and winning? And after that, what was that what was that like for you?
Honestly, it was just an absolute pinnacle. It was just surreal to the utmost. And we had a big Aussie contingent with us because of all of our Australian production team who work on it, who were able to be in Los Angeles. So that in itself, being together and being able to experience the glamour, and then, I mean, it was just to be there was just a dream come true. And to win 3 out of 3 just blew our minds. And I remember standing on stage and looking down, and Peter Jackson's there and Ron Howard's there, and I'm just thinking, how did this happen? I mean, how did this happen? This this show that came from this place. I mean, we spend a lot of time in very small teams, in regional places, in people's lives, and suddenly you're on this very glamorous setting, celebrating what is the culmination of all of these people's honor that they've given you. Really, I think that you're only there because of what people have let you do with their stories and how they've been open and shared them, and it's because of them that you're standing there, and it's so humbling, but oh my gosh, it's so much fun.
I know that probably almost that every storyline on the show is something that touches you. But I was curious if there's been any storyline or storylines that you found particularly moving or particularly have affected you over these past two seasons.
Oh, look, so many. I just, you get inside the heads of the people who are sharing themselves, and especially spending so much time in the edit and knowing every moment, that even the ones that we can't share. There's the poignancy, the openness, the vulnerability of characters when they expose that. I personally find some of the moments that they experience as families. To me, love on the spectrum includes the love that they find with their families and friends. And the love is between a mother and a son, and an aunt and a niece as well. And some of those moments of connection, I think they're so instructive to all of us. How seeing this kindness, this understanding and this openness, it strips away the kinds of things that we often see reflected in reality, which are competitive and bitchy and all driven by drama, and driven by the idea of conflict. The conflict is the inner turmoil of a character trying to achieve something that they've always wanted to achieve, and that they find this love from the audience, and even if they don't end up at the end of the day in a successful relationship, there's so much that they've learned. And I know, as somebody who dated really late in life as well, watching people dating and learning about that, taking that experience away, that you don't have to find your perfect person on the very first date. It's the friendships that get forged on those dates in and of themselves. You learn so much from these people as they go through this process in such a vulnerable way for the audience.
And to get to the audience part of this, like you said with the audience, have you encountered people whose views on autism and people on the spectrum were affected by seeing this program?
Oh, consistently. I mean, the world is full of different opinions, and of course you hear certain things and you take the feedback on board, where you positive, negatives, or whatever. But honestly, in the 26 years I've been making television, I've never experienced anything like the overwhelming positivity towards the series, where people just feel seen. They feel like their stories are being told finally on screen in a respectful way. They feel encouraged, and I think that is just such an important part about this. When we have diversity of casting, and we're telling stories of people who have disabilities, or people who are neurodiverse, we're seeing something that a huge part of society is finally seeing a different person reflected on screen that they may relate to. And so I know that when we started this process, there was no such thing as neurodiverse dating websites and apps and things. And now they're all over the world. They're literally places where people who are autistic can go to date and sign up to websites, and that didn't happen before. And I think it was, this series has really affected the sector, and the way that people can use it as a shining light, and encouraging positive storytelling, and people not being afraid if they have been labelled as other or given a diagnosis about, you know, their learning and the way that they see the world as being different. I think there's been a really big rising in the way that people see different as great now.
Well, Karina, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our panel in just a little bit.
Thank you.